of working women. As I have said before, I'm happy to see that you were able to brave the elements and get here today, and we hope that you will find today's seminar enjoyable as well as informative. Today, women comprise an increasingly larger and larger portion of the working force. No longer are women stereotyped to office-type positions. You can find women in all types of jobs, from heavy equipment operators to the political arena. So we're not sitting down typing anymore. We're doing all sorts of things. Women are working for a greater number of years and are returning to work soon after starting their families. Speaking from my own personal experience, I just had a little daughter, and already I'm back at work. I can't see staying home for 2 and 3 years, even though I know that she could benefit from my being there. So the traditional role of wife and mother no longer apply fully to today's women, who must meet the demands of her job, her profession, and also, in addition to meeting this demand, she must continue to meet the demands of running a household. The old saying that a man's work from dusk to dawn, but a woman's work is never done, is truer today than it was ever before. Although women's liberation has come, I know myself, my husband tries to help me, but it's still the major responsibility of cleaning, cooking, food shopping still rests on me. And this is still my responsibility. A working woman who works from 9 to 5 must get up in the morning, prepare breakfast for herself or her husband or for her preschool children or school children. Additionally, she must return home in the afternoon. She must prepare that nutritious, well-balanced meal for her family in the evening. And I think that many of us could use some assistance in providing some viable alternatives and solutions to help us to meet these nutritional requirements of our families. We hope that the seminar this afternoon will provide you with some of these alternatives, at least to meeting the nutritional requirements. Our keynote speaker today will discuss generally some of the nutritional problems you face every day, and later on this afternoon, specific concerns will be discussed during our workshop sessions. Time has been allowed for you to ask questions after each particular topic, so we hope that you will feel free to stand up, to express yourself, to ask any questions that you may have, and to have a really good exchange of information today. Not only can you learn from us, but we hope that we can learn from you. Margaret McLeod, who is Director of Nutrition Services with the Newark Preschool Council, will introduce our keynote speaker. Deputy Mayor Biazzi will be here later on this afternoon to do the official signing of the National Nutrition Week proclamation. Margaret?
Thank you very much, and I'd like to extend greetings to you from all of us on the panel, and certainly think that it's marvelous with all of the problems that you had to face with transportation and weather to be here. It was the goal of the council to try to provide for you the best possible person, the most qualified person to address you this afternoon, and I'm sure that when our guest speaker completes her presentation, you will agree that this goal has been reached. We're delighted to be able to present to you Mrs. Marcella Katz. Mrs. Katz has a long and very impressive record in the field of nutrition, and I will very briefly, just for your information, try to go over some of her accomplishments. She is a graduate of Columbia University. She received an MS degree from the University of Wisconsin and a BS from Brooklyn College. She is currently the Clinical Associate for Teachers College Nutrition Program. She also has many other types of programs with which she is affiliated, director and organizer of the Nutrition Division of the Health Insurance Plan, a clinical instructor at the Department of Community Medicine at New York Medical College. I have been personally impressed with some of her achievements. We'd be here all afternoon if I had to go over them. But one particularly impressive is that she has worked on a task force for the New York City Health Department Nutrition Bureau in the Infant Feeding and Food Supplement Program. She has also many publications to her credit, among which co-editor of Science and Politics of Nutrition, Food and Nutrition Council of Greater New York in 1972, Nutrition, A Social Detriment of Health, paper published in Conference Proceedings in March 1972, and another publication, Vitamins, Food, and Your Health, with a public affairs pamphlet in 1971. It's with great pleasure that I present to you Marcella Katz.
Thank you very much, Ms. McLeod, and all of you in Newark. I come over from New York City, even though I live in Bergen County in New Jersey, because as I say to people, I really only sleep in New Jersey. But I'm delighted to come here and talk about the problems of women, work, and nutrition. I began to think about this problem about a year ago when the the American Association for Public Health was going to have a conference on women and work. And I was asked to prepare a paper in the nutrition section for that conference. And I began to think, and feel much more relaxed about these things, and women are making many different choices. But we can say that despite this trend that shows an increasing number of women with young children going back to work, there is a reluctance on the part of society to recognize this, and a resistance on the part of society to develop some new structures to make it easier for families, new family support services that are more appropriate to the changing role of women. I was delighted to hear from Ms. McLeod about the marvelous Head Start program you have here for young children, but really the problems of daycare still have not been solved for most women who go to work, and they have to make some other kinds of arrangements. And the women of 1976, as Ms. Wilson pointed out so well, still bears the extra heavy burden of unrealistic goals of trying to be the best mother, the best wife, the best homemaker, and the best worker on her job. And these frequently are difficult roles to achieve, and she finds herself constantly at odds with the society and culture. I think the key issue for working women is still how to reconcile and fulfill home and family roles with their occupational status. And we know that despite the newer ideas of greater sharing of household responsibilities, the heaviest burden tends to fall on women, and particularly women with children. And most important, I think, there is an increasing number of women who are to ease the burden of women workers with children, who they said are the worst victims of overwork. So you see, there is recognition on an international scale. And they say, firstly, that there has to be a more equal and equitable sharing of the burden of housework and care of children between men and women. Secondly, there has to be a greater rationalization and mechanization of housework, including food preparation, which is what I plan to talk to you about. And thirdly, a shifting of a large part of domestic work outside the individual family, which is the other part of what I want to talk to you about. Because our concern here today is whether this new pattern of the working mother is placing the working mother family at nutritional risk. Are we risking the mother and child for going to work? Many overburdened working mothers have adopted what I have chosen to call the new occupation work diet. That is an eating pattern that consists of greater use of convenience foods, highly processed foods, breakfast cereals without cooking, dehydrated potatoes without peeling, snack-related foods such as cracker sandwiches, cold cuts, frankfurters, hamburgers, and soft drinks. Now, I'm not making any moral judgment about this, but we have to ask ourselves, are these nutritionally worthwhile foods? We all do want convenience. But let's talk about that convenience in a moment. Most of us who are working have increased eating out at the fast food, quick service, limited menu drive-in restaurant. We all are quite enthusiastic about these new products and the new eating style because they do serve a need. And the food companies have understood this. They are serving a need of the tremendously increasing labor force participation of women. "You deserve a break today," sings out the food companies. We all know it, don't we? And they're smart enough to know that they want to provide a happy treat for the very deserving, very harassed, overtired working mother. She deserves a treat. She wants a treat. And what kind of treat are they providing? The breakfast squares, the hamburgers, and the thick shakes. These are foods that are high in calories. I see you're going to have a workshop on weight reduction. I know that workshop is going to be very full because most of these foods are high in calories. But they're low in most other essential nutrients that give us the health we need to carry on these heavy tasks that have been recognized that women carry. Most of these foods need no chewing. You might as well do without your teeth. They're low in fiber, the kind of part of food that we're beginning to recognize most of us need more of. They have too much sodium. And for people in the black community particularly, the sodium, which we think is part of salt and the salty tasting foods, can be a cause of hypertension. But all these foods taste good. I think all of us have tried, I won't name that brand, but those hamburgers, the fast food restaurants, of course they're good. And the food companies know that taste and texture are #1 on the hit parade of our buying power. And unfortunately, nutrition rates only 7th in the ability to affect consumer buying habits and eating behavior. And the companies know that. And for that reason, food manufacturers have not been making nutritious foods, nor are they stimulated to even try to make these nutritious foods because we buy all the other things. The result then is that the nutrient content of these limited menus is too narrow. There are no fresh fruits, dark green and yellow vegetables, let alone the whole grains that provide the fiber among these fast foods. And the thick shakes have little relation to milk. One of the leading nutritionists from California has called this pattern of eating in the American diet a national disaster. It's a diet in which there is more sugar, fat, and white flour than all the total amount of meat, fruits, and vegetables that we can get. And one of the outstanding cardiologists, doctors who specialize in heart disease, which is almost an epidemic in this country, he's predicted that eating all these hamburgers will lead to an epidemic of heart disease in 20 years, especially amongst men. And women, as we said before, are already struggling alone with young children. Think of it, we have to be the widows of the future as well. The end result of this pattern of changing food choices and all these economic, social, and cultural changes is a continuing deterioration of our diet and eventually a decline in our nutrition. Add to this the skyrocketing cost of meat, which is a good source of protein. It used to be where a working woman could, on the way home, pick up some hamburger, steak or chop, and put it on the broiler or in the frying pan, and quick, she had a meal. But most of us can't afford to buy the steaks and chops anymore, and the hamburger is even out of sight and mostly fat. This, again, is another assault on the diet of working mother families. The United States Department of Agriculture issues these grandiose statements, and they say that we're all getting about 99 grams of protein per person. Well, that's because they figure it out on what is sold in the market, whereas an actual survey of what people were eating in asking people over 24 hours what they were eating in a survey called the Health and Nutritional Examination Survey in 1974, they found that 90% of children 1 to 5 and 90% of women 18 to 44, that's women in the working force, mothers of young children, had diets that were deficient in iron, vitamin A, and protein. This is serious. And at the health insurance plan, some of you who have relatives or friends in New York, we call it HIP. We have 750,000 members. We have taken diet histories in the New York City community, and we are seeing an increased use of the canned convenience foods, such as the canned spaghettis, hash, beef stew, chow mein. And families are using cheaper cuts of meat, but even that less frequently. And they're using these foods as main dishes because we don't have the money, and they're convenient to open up a can for the working woman. The women don't even use the cheaper cuts of meat because they take longer to prepare. You might prepare a big stew on Sunday, but it doesn't really last all week. And it was found in a study of food habits of women that women reported that working women, that they find less enjoyment in everyday menu planning and cooking than non-working women. And the major reason for this was the time problem. And this is why the recommendation of the United Nations organization that women try to shift a large part of their domestic work outside the individual family is really relevant. The working mother is not able to satisfactorily feed herself or her family in the present food production and distribution system. When a woman has more money, she can perhaps do this by employing other people, or she might go to a delicatessen and buy expensive gourmet meals. But most of us can't do this. And so we have to try to learn how to prepare meals from some centralized, out-of-the-home facilities which could prepare and distribute meals for children to eat at home that are nutritious, varied, and also taste good. If by 1980 there will be millions of women with families working outside the home, then we need to encourage the development of support services that will enable women to fulfill their responsibilities at home and at work with greater ease and less disruption to the health and welfare of the family. The providers of convenience food think that they have tried to help us because they provide foods which women, they think, can add a little bit of home preparation. But as we pointed out before, most of these are poor nutritional choices because the food companies are selling more service than food. The convenience foods that are on the market usually contain less of the high quality and more expensive ingredients, such as meat and cheese, than similar home-prepared foods. The working mother values her time, and she wants real convenience, it seems. She wants ready-prepared foods to be eaten away from home. And that's why she very often sends the kids, and occasionally she even goes herself with them, to the nearest fast food outlet or to the takeout fried, high-fat dinner. And this pattern of eating in families of all economic groups, and this is not just families with small amounts of money, but families across the lifestyle, high and low income. I think this kind of eating out, fast food snacking is also contributing to the destruction of the family mealtime, and I think to the breakdown of family life. It seems as if everything in our society seems to be in a state of constant, unpredictable flux. And if there's anything that meals ought to be, they ought to be something more than just a meal. They ought to be a time when families can be together. Well, we have to ask ourselves, can the food industry solve this problem for us? And could we fortify foods, perhaps, so that they are nutritionally adequate? Well, it seems as if the food industry, as I've pointed out, really hasn't made a great attempt, and they really haven't been able to make a good, nutritious product. And anyway, even if they did, it seems as if all they do, it might lead to more snacking, more eating out of the home, outside of the home, and fewer families getting together for a meal. Then if this happens, we ought to look at this problem differently than just getting a meal. I think that we can develop food services. And the reason I was so anxious to come and talk to you about this is because I hope that I might stimulate some of you to think about another way of providing food services for working women and working women with families. And some of you who don't have small children, I think would still profit by a different way of getting your meals. And it would be a meal that would provide a varied menu, and it would be tasty, nutritious food, and you could pick it up on the way home from work. And in this way, we'd have to shift the responsibility of preparing food from the individual home and the individual family to something outside the home, perhaps to a commissary in a factory, which already produces 1 to 2 meals a day, maybe to hospitals or to other kinds of kitchens, school lunch kitchens, kitchens in daycare centers, or nutrition programs for the elderly. Every housing project could build a commissary along with the daycare center. Women who wish to work at home could be encouraged to prepare meals for other working women in a shared work arrangement. Women who've lost their jobs now perhaps might think of developing some cooperative way of preparing meals for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 other women. It's amazing that more of this kind of cooperative effort has not been developed. Especially since, I don't know how many of you are aware of this, according to the 1970 census, the largest number of women workers are in the food service industry. We know that women are waitresses, but they also work in the factories. Some of you who, I don't know, you're all Essex County, but in Camden, for instance, in the Campbell soup factories, and the largest proportion of women workers are the women. And do you know that the average salary is the lowest of 1 million working women between the ages of 35 to 44? They took home only $2,400 plus tips. That's incredible in 1970. But of course, that's for the whole country. It includes the South. It includes Mississippi, where women are the largest number of workers in Kentucky Fried Chicken, you know, when the That's when they make that delicious Kentucky Fried Chicken you have, but it's women who are doing that work. Or the women who work in the fish packing plants. So it's women who are working in large industries who are the food workers. They're working outside the home in food. Well, how can we solve the problem for them so that when they come home, they can have a good meal, a nutritious meal, a decent meal for themselves and their children? There are women who want to go out to, it seems as if women want to go out to work, and as I said before, it's really amazing that women haven't tried to do something on their own, in some ways, in a cooperative way. I'm sure there are many women, and men even, with small children who wish to stay at home, who could develop this, what I call a cottage-type industry, to provide home-cooked meals for other working parent families. These people will need training and some supervision in quantity cookery, but I know it can be done if some of us put our heads to it and we begin to think that the time for this idea has come. And there are models for this kind of food service in other countries. I visited in Sweden, where they built new towns and 20-story apartment buildings, and where in each one of these apartment buildings there was a daycare center and a place where they prepared meals that the mother can pick up on her way home. She could prepare the salad if she liked at home, or she could just take up a lot of salad and then just add her own salad dressing. So it wasn't just a hamburger or a meatloaf, but it was also some green leafy vegetables that she brought into her own home, and the whole family could sit down to it. In the United States, the only example I know is a form of food delivery service that was developed in Miami by the Cubans who came over here, who missed their own home cooking and the kind of food that they prepared. And many of the families, because they came over with very little money, had to go to work. All the adult members of the family went to work. So some of the adults, organized what they called cantinas. And these cantinas provided take-home foods to which the families were accustomed, and they were all the good, nutritious, tasty foods that they liked. They listed the menus in advance, in advertisements that were given out and in the newspapers. And the families would make their choice for a week in advance, and then they could plan their other food shopping around these pick-up hot meals. And then the family could sit down and eat this meal in their own home setting. So I think all of us ought to begin thinking about this, and I told Ms. McLeod when I talked to her that I thought that her Head Start programs might be the kind of groups that I would love to see do something of this sort. So perhaps you will look at your own communities and find ways and means of developing new avenues to provide better nutrition and family support for working women who do deserve a better nutritional break. Thank you.
To utilize it. At this time, I would like to introduce the rest of the panel who will be conducting the various workshops this afternoon. Florence Peterson, who is senior nutritionist with the WIC program, will be heading up the Sensible Approach to Weight Reduction workshop, which will be located in the yellow area, and this is right up front to my right. Ellen Kirpin, who is the home economist with the WIC program, will be assisting Ms. Peterson in this workshop. The Community Nutrition Resources workshop, which is the first one on my left in this area, will be headed by Margaret McLeod, whom you've already met. Barbara Meredith, who is not on stage. Yes, she is, Barbara. Public Information Officer with the Newark Office of Consumer Action, will be in charge of the menu planning and food shopping workshop. Ms. Eva Robinson, home economist here at Public Service Gas and Electric Company, will do the food the cooking demonstration in the room where we served the refreshments earlier. The blue area, which is the second on my left, Ms. Clara Stone, dietitian with the Food and Nutrition Dairy Council, will head up the Nutritional Needs of Young Children workshop. And last but not least, Gloria Clark, home economist with the Essex County Welfare Board and chairman of the Essex County Nutrition Council, will chair the potluck session, which will be held in the orange area to my left at the back. At this time, the workshop leaders will come down and we will begin the various workshops this afternoon. Do you have any questions that you would like to address to Mrs. Cass at this time? Are there any questions at all from the floor? Okay. Thank you very much.
Glad to hear something.
We're at the nutrition workshop at 80 Park Place in Newark, New Jersey. Nutrition work problems of working women. With me this afternoon, I have Mrs. Judy Wilson and Mrs. Marcella Katz. I'll let them give you a little background on what they do. Mrs. Wilson.
I am the director of the Women, Infants, and Children Supplemental Food Program here in Newark, Department of Health and Welfare. The program provides nutritious supplements to approximately 8,200 women, infants, and children throughout the city of Newark each month.
Ms. Katz.
I am the director of a nutrition program called Health Insurance Plan. It's a prepaid group practice medical plan in New York City with 750,000 subscribers.
Right. Ms. Wilson, why nutritional workshop for women?
Well, I saw this particular workshop as being needed, both from my own experience and because I do have a large number of females employed on my own staff. Just through conversations with them, observing their eating patterns, I saw the need for this type of workshop. I see them coming in the morning, ordering eggs and toast and having coffee at work. And I said, this is a very expensive way to eat, and these are women who are making less than $8,000 a year. And talking with them further, determining what types of things they would like to know about the field of nutrition, I said, look, this is a good idea. We have National Nutrition Week coming up. This is an issue we should address.
What kind of things do you expect to come out of this conference or workshop today?
Well, if we can get women to think about the types of things that Ms. Cass has said today, I think we would have accomplished a tremendous amount.
Right. Ms. Katz, one of the things that you hit on during your keynote speech was extended family. Could you tell me a little about that?
What we mean by the extended family, of course, is the kind of family that included a grandparent, usually a grandmother, sometimes an unmarried aunt or uncle, sometimes a cousin, who lived with the family that had the young children. Nowadays, grandma's out working herself. Aunt has an apartment in a single room only where she's working. And the little family is all by themselves without anybody else. And as I said in my talk,